There we are.
Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
You good, Brad? I'm good. You sure?
Yep, thank you.
Just checking.
Thank you.
Just checking with the big fella. Make sure the big fella's good.
Bill?
Thank you very much. I'd like to call to order the Lower Paxton Township Municipal Authority meeting for Tuesday, August 27th, 2019. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Ramsey.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Big crowd tonight. Exciting municipal authority meeting. So first item of business will be the approval of the minutes from March 19th, 2019. I assume everybody had a chance to read those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the minutes of March the 19th, 2019 as prepared and circulated.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Judd. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, and next item of business is public comment. This will be comments on any matter relating to the sanitary sewer authority or the stormwater authority of which is not on the agenda this evening for discussion. Is there any public comment at this point in time? Okay. All right, hearing none. Any board member comments at this point? Wow. Okay. Let's just keep it moving. I like that. All right, let's go to, so we're going to start with the sanitary sewer fund first. The first item of business is some old business action on a request from property owner at 5521 Ridgeview Road for assistance in repairs to the private sewer line, including repairs to Ridgeview Road. Mr. Weaver, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
are you
members
ready?
of the board. I am prepared.
Okay, just checking. We'll make sure you're good.
Board members, as you may recall, this action was tabled at the last authority meeting. The board requested staff to obtain some price quotations to perform the work in order to evaluate the total cost before acting on this request. Staff has received two quotes for the work. The low quote is in the amount of $14,000 from Farhat. The quote is in your packet. Jim has reached out to them since the quote is approaching 30 days old, and they have responded by email to Jim that the quote is still good, and if the board would take action, that they would be prepared to do the work. Just a little background. This private sewer was replaced as part of our sewer replacement program. However, the property owner had a failed sewer that caused the road to settle on Ridgeview Road. He then made a request to the authority to provide some assistance because he feels that this work the failed sewer was created by the work performed by the authority. As you know, staff really can't make a recommendation since the line is private and we have no obligation to provide assistance. However, in the past, the authority has provided assistance to 5 different property owners. In the last 15 years, we've replaced over 4,000 private sewers without any failures. So from time to time, you can have a failure. At this time, staff is prepared to support providing assistance in the amount of $14,000 if the board desires. We found that looking at this price quotation, if the work was performed by a contractor under contract with the township, that this cost would be similar due to the mobilization, traffic control. So we feel it would cost us an equal amount if we would do it ourselves. I believe the owner of the property, John, are you here? Do you have anything to say? I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Weaver at this time?
Bill,
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let's go one at a time here.
question number 1. Are you familiar with the excavating company that has submitted the bill and or any other work that they have completed?
I am not. Jim, have you checked their reference?
Yeah, we actually used them in our last replacement project, PC2A. Well, actually, they were worked for our contractor, Able, in doing a repair. So we have experience with them, and
Okay.
they did a satisfactory job doing the work, which passed all the air tests.
Good, I just wanted to make sure that someone had at least knows something about the company and they've performed in a satisfactory manner. And my second question goes to council. Have you reviewed it? I assume everything's okay from your standpoint? Okay. Those are my two, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ramsey, I think you had a question, or Miss Lindsay, you had a question too? Or?
I did, but mine was what Gary was asking.
Okay.
Mine's are
Sorry.
thinking alike, that's scary.
Mr. Weaver, in the two proposals, one of them seems to include restoration, one does not.
Yes, there were some discrepancies within the proposal. I believe, Tim, the one had, what was the other discrepancy in the other one?
Based on a review, it looks like the McClure quote has restoration of, I believe it had restoration of the yard as well as the paving. And the second quote from Farhat excluded that.
So the difference being $3,000 and some odd dollars, the township finishing off the restoration, it would still be the best price.
What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I believe so. I think for the small amount of both asphalt paving and yard restoration, I think that, Farhat included that in their quote, they'd still be the lowest.
Okay, thank you.
So Tim, then the township is going to finish the restoration and the paving?
I believe, we haven't discussed it, but I believe our I&I crew would handle that.
Well, I think we would have to if we take the Farhat proposal, right? I mean, if we accept the Farhat proposal, it says in here specifically, Lower Pax Township Authority will take care of the final street paving and lawn restoration, so, right?
Right.
Yeah, we would take care of it. I
Yeah.
was just specifying that it would probably be our I&I crew that would do it rather than
Okay.
Public Works.
Okay, just so it's taken care of, since it wasn't
Yeah.
in the quote.
And I guess it's worth repeating, Mr. Chairman, that the authority and its contractors have replaced more than 4,000 or how many? More than 4,000 private sewers over the years, and we've maybe done this 5 times, so the circumstances have to be extraordinary. And I think I was on this block back in 2017, and I think I saw the property. I don't know if I spoke with the property owner or not, but it's a compelling case, and it's has to be a certain set of circumstances for us to do it, but I think it certainly qualifies.
Okay. Any other further discussion at this point? Okay, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve an assistance for repairs to the private sewer line, including all of the repairs necessary at Ridgeview Road to Fairhot in the amount of $14,000 as presented and recommended by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Lindsay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I think we just do this by voice acclamation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. All right. Now to new business, Resolution 191301 and 191302, authorizing condemnation of temporary easements for private sewer replacements in the BC2 ABC mini basin project. Mr. Weaver.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the board have seen these resolutions dozens of times. Either the standard resolutions to require the temporary construction easement for the replacement of the private sewers in BC2 and Spring Creek. We have 2 property owners that received the agreement because the property has sold. So the BC2 project has taken a long time to get off the ground, so there's hundreds of them up there. From time to time, if a property settles, these private sewer replacement agreements are not recorded. So the new owner that buys it, we require them to sign. We give them 30 days notice, and if they don't sign within 30 days, we prepare condemnation resolutions. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Bill, are the property under contract, or are they just properties for sale, or one of them just for sale? And so we're waiting for that sale, then settlement, and then the implementation of this?
These two have already settled, and the owners are living there.
Oh, okay, so you're dealing with established new owners.
We catch them when the settlement happens for the sewer billing, and Chris at the garage always just checks just to make sure we catch all the transfers, to make sure we have the proper agreement to do the work.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weaver, on Resolution 19-1302, there's no address on that one. All the other ones have an address. I didn't know if that would make a difference. It would be Lauren Whitco and Jordan Watson.
44 Judy Lane.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if it made a difference because there wasn't an address
Yeah,
there.
usually the address is also on the plat that gets attached to the resolution,
Okay.
so that way you'd know where.
Thanks for the reminder, Steve. I have to get those to you.
Okay. Hearing no further conversation, is there a motion on the floor on resolutions 19-1301 and 02?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve Resolution 2019-13-01 and 2019-13-02, authorizing the condemnation of the temporary easements for the private sewer replacements in the BC 2ABC mini basin project as presented and recommended by Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Crispin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Zumas. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. I think we can do this by voice vote as well. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. All right. Resolution 1914, authorizing and approving a subsidy agreement with Lower Paxton Township for the Penvest loan. Mr. Smita making the appearance tonight. There we go.
Oh,
There you go.
as you're aware, the township has applied for and has received a loan from the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Investment Authority, otherwise known as Penvest, in the amount of $13,354,113 for the continuing sewer remediation project. Part of the collateral for that loan, in addition to the township's general obligation, is the pledge of the revenues from the authority from the sewer system to the repayment of the loan, and that is done formally through a subsidy agreement which has been negotiated with Penvest for this project. This resolution is simply your authorization and approval of both the approval of the project and approval of the substantial form of the subsidy agreement and the permission to move forward.
Okay. Mr. Smita, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smita?
I don't have a question, but there's a typographical error on, and this drives me nuts, on the top of the second page. Could you make that Spring Creek instead of Spring Creed?
Yes.
Creed. Creed.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Good editing.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion for resolution, is there a motion for resolution 1914?
With the change added, Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve Resolution 2019-14, which authorizes and approves a subsidy agreement with Lower Paxton Township for the Penvest loan as presented by Mr. Smita.
Mr. Crispin, you're all over it tonight. You're up.
Sorry,
3-0,
I'll
man.
I'll be
3-0
more than happy to step aside, Mr. Chairman.
No, I love it. That's great. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Judd. Any further discussion?
Just a question: is Spring Creek repeated anywhere else? I didn't notice that it was.
Okay, I didn't
I think it's
see
only
it
in one location. Okay,
at the top.
I'll
Sorry.
call for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I think we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Mr. Shannon, I think you're up next with action on the GHD Engineering Services Agreement for the Penvest loan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Penvest requires agreements, formal agreements, for all the costs that they are going to reimburse, and you should have before you tonight an Exhibit A15 that we prepared to cover the engineering and inspection services for the BC2 project, which is to be funded by Penvest, at least partially funded by Penvest, the eligible costs. The total for the construction phase services, and that's all this is for, basically from here on till about 2 years from now, is $379,500. Over 60% of that is for a full-time resident project representative or an inspector for an estimated 18 months from GHD. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Shannon at this point?
Just a comment. It's a good thing we approved the last course of action. It will help you. You ready for motion, Mr. Chairman?
Ready for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve GHD Engineering Services Agreement for usage with the Penvest loan as presented by Mr. Shannon.
Mr. Crispin, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zumas again. Any further discussion? All right, let's actually, since it is approving a consultant, let's do this by roll call, if you could, Ms. Smith.
Mr. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mrs. Lindsay?
Aye.
Mr. Zumas?
Aye.
Mr. Chrisman?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Thanks.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Now.
All right, next item of action is action on request from Triple Crown for acceptance of a deformed sewer section at the Blue Ridge Village. Mr. Weaver. I don't see Mr. DeSanto, though.
Yeah, that's what I was looking.
So it looks like it's just you, Mr. Weaver.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. DeSanto, Triple Crown Corporation, received a defective work notice from GHD on July 1st, 2019 for a section of pipe that passed the air testing and mandrel testing but failed the lamp testing. So our standard specifications require that any pipe that fails a lamp test has to be repaired. The lamp testing really is a belt and suspenders kind of thing, because mandrels and air testing doesn't check to see if the pipe is bent in any fashion. When you stick lamping is basically sticking a flashlight, right, Jim, into the manhole, and you see a full circle at the other end. We did not see that when staff conducted it. I believe Triple Crown requested to witness it then, Jim, correct? And we went out and did it again, I believe. Following all that, Mr. DeSanto sent us an email requesting that in lieu of repairing the deformed piece of pipe, that he provide a credit to the authority in the amount of $2,000 for a future repair. So after some discussion from staff, we discovered that we really can't make a recommendation because we don't have any authority, because GHD is the writer of the spec and the engineer in the spec, and they are the sole determiner in this case. So at this point, I will turn it over to Melissa or Kevin.
All right. With the deformed pipe issue, normally if it was within like an area within the development that was an easy fix, we would say, yeah, go ahead and dig that up. But this is in a location where it's in a casing pipe that's underneath Lingostown Road, right in the entrance of the development. After talking with some other of the engineers in my office, the lamping test, like Bill said, is generally like a belt and suspenders type thing. It's to see if there's, like you said, any movement in the pipe if it's not perfect. The pipe did pass an air test and the mandrel test, which is normally the two tests that we suggest doing. If it passes the air test, it passes the mandrel test. Normally we accept the pipe because the pipe is watertight if it passes the air test. And the pipe itself, since it's PVC and it's PVC is a little bit of a flexible pipe. The specs for PVC has 5% deflection written into it. So if it passed the mandrel, which is designed to make sure that it does pass the 5% deflection, we normally accept those. And due to the location and needing to close down Linglestown Road again and get another HOP for it, we felt that since it passed the air test and the mandrel test, that it could be accepted with the credit from DeSanto.
My question for you is, with the credit that's being offered of 2,000, if to actually replace the pipe though, how much would it cost? Let's just say we would move to authorize this and say we'll take the credit 2,000, and all of a sudden it fails and we have to replace it. What would be the actual cost to replace it?
The actual cost would be fairly high. I had done an estimate. Bill had requested that exact answer question. My estimate was about 15,000. Since there is night work, there'd be work with the HOP, and by the time this would fail, all of the development would likely be in. If it was to fail, all the development would be in, and you'd have to do a lot of bypass pumping and things too. So it would be a pricey repair.
In your professional experience, though, how many times have you seen this where the pipe is not showing the full moon at the other end, and it has? I mean, and how often have you seen this? I mean, you mentioned about the PVC piping has some flexibility, so it has a deflection. There might be some bend in that line. I mean, in your professional opinion, though, how often have you seen this, and what's your opinion as to the longevity of the pipe in the current state that it's in?
Right.
The longevity, I think, is pretty similar. Our field representatives for a lot of our other clients don't even do the lamping anymore. The lamping was an older test that was very helpful before the mandrels and things became kind of standard. So normally for most of our other clients, we only do the we only do the mandrel and the air test, except for larger pipes where the mandrels are kind of expensive and most people don't have like the larger mandrels in stock. So a lot of times we don't even do the lamping anymore. Some of the field guys that I was talking to say that PVC, while it's not it doesn't happen all the time, but PVC will occasionally come where it's a little bit bent, just from the nature of the material when it comes on the trucks and things. So it's not unheard of to have a little bit of not true light pipe.
How long is this pipe?
I think it's about 120 feet. 128.
Okay.
Mr. Weaver, have we ever had this occur in the township before?
We've had it on replacement projects recently, one time. In that particular instance, it was there was a credit that was worked out between us and the contractor on that job.
Okay, so we have done the credit before.
For a replacement project, just never that I know of for a developer installed project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other further questions? Any other discussion by board members?
If you're not doing it very often, what requires it for this particular project and not other projects?
Well, a lot of, like I said, for all of Lower Paxton jobs, you guys always have it in your specs. It's in the developer specs. It's in the replacement specifications.
If I can just make a comment to that. It is a useful tool, obviously, because our staff has found sewers that have a deformed pipe in it that have passed a mandrel and an air test. So we still believe in Lower Paxton it's a valuable tool. As Tim just mentioned, we did have it on our last replacement job. So we would like to continue to have it in the spec. It doesn't take very long either, does it, Jim? You put a flashlight in the pipe and,
But there's no way of knowing where the bend is.
yes, you basically TV it then. We did TV it. Did we TV it or did they do it?
We televised.
Yeah. If you have that kind of situation, then we'll have our staff go out and televise to find out just where the deformity is and how bad, because it can be severe. In this case, it's not. I don't know how bad the last one with Dolly was, Jim or Tim, but
They're probably very similar to this.
yeah.
So is all 128 feet of it under Linglestown Road?
Yes, this run is all under Linglestown Road.
And when we did it before, do you do it so that the money's there if you need it to fix it, but if you don't use it, you don't use it?
I believe in this case, Tim will tell you that we used it as a tool to offset change orders, correct?
Yeah, it's in the contract. It allows for the engineer to assess the credit based on like a diminished value. So basically, you're getting that asset, but it's not exactly like it was supposed to be.
So it could cost 15,000, but we're getting 2. Okay.
I have 2 questions. Question number 1 is for you, since you're representing the township. What is your recommendation with regard to the request?
I would accept a credit. Now, I don't want to tell you what dollar amount you should accept for that. That's, I think, up to you and the board. But the pipe itself, I think, just with the location of it, I don't think it warrants digging up Linglestown Road again. And I just don't think it warrants all that extra expense to dig this up. And I forgot to mention too, Bill brought it up, that they did televise it, and it looks like the deformity is kind of on the top of the pipe, so it doesn't look like there's going to be a sag in that line where you're going to get a lot of debris or anything that's going to settle in that location, which in that case I would probably suggest replacing it.
Okay.
So worst case scenario is we'd have to dig up Linglestown Road anyway. So it's either dig it up now or dig it up later. It'd still have to be dug up.
It would still have to be dug up.
My second question is not for you, but I saw the applicant come in, so I'd like to have Mr. DeSanto have the opportunity to speak to this, if he so chooses.
Mr. DeSanto, you can come to the podium.
Good evening, Mark DeSanto with Triple Crown Corporation. I think Melissa was very clear. The standard in testing today is air testing, and the mandrel checks for that 5% deflection. So although lamping is used and it has been used historically, it's not kind of the standard today, but it is a valid test. But with air testing and mandrel, it's pretty standard in the industry to say you've passed the required tests. And the very second important part that I think Melissa brought up also, I just want to emphasize, the deflection is shown on the top of the pipe. The authority did televise this, and it's not holding any water. And there are ASTM standards on this that if you're not holding more than 10% of the diameter of the pipe with water, that's an acceptable installation. It doesn't matter what you lay, ductile iron, PVC, there's going to be some minor deviation in that pipe. It's impossible to lay everything 100% flat. So if Melissa thought this was wrong, if we thought it was wrong, we dig it up. We thought this was the appropriate policy. We've met with staff, we've reviewed it, and everybody kind of agreed that this was the best thing to do. So we've reviewed it with PennDOT, because it's their HOP, and had dialogue with them, and they're okay with what's going on at this point. So I sent those emails to Melissa. So it's not like we're going outside of a reasonableness standard. This was kind of suggested collectively as the right result. So we would ask the board to approve it tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. DeSanto?
Mark, do you know how old the pipe is, approximately?
This pipe was just installed.
It just
Oh, it's just
wasn't
installed. Oh,
Yeah, so like when
okay.
Tim said you're doing a replacement area, it's still a
Right.
new pipe just being
Right,
installed. This
okay.
is just, actually, this is brand new pipe. I mean, it's 30 days old, generally 45 days old, but we did
Okay.
replace the old line across Linglestown Road. So if you remember, about 60 days ago, we shut Linglestown Road
Right.
down for 2 nights, took the old pipe out and the old casing, which was totally deteriorated, and put in brand new plastic casing, brand new pipe into the
Oh,
manhole.
so it's brand new, okay. Wasn't
In the unlikely event that it would fail, would we be responsible to fix it, or would you be responsible to
we
fix it?
would.
No,
At
We
this
would-
point in time, it's our responsibility to fix it until dedication. You still then have an 18-month maintenance guarantee after the dedication. So, I mean, in my approximation, we won't even be ready to dedicate this line for another year and a half, because phase one's very big. Then you'd have an 18-month maintenance guarantee beyond that for failure. So we suggested, the contribution, I think we kind of discussed it, $2,000 to the general fund, do whatever you want with it, but you're going to have at least probably 3 years of guarantee from us on the pipe install.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Now I have
Okay.
a question back to Melissa, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may, Mr. Chrisman.
Based on what Mark has said, and Melissa, what you said earlier, I need to ask you a question. Your recommendation was that we accept this request. However, you said the amount of money was yet to be determined, or that wasn't. My question is to you is, who determines that amount? I'm sure it's Mr. DeSanto on one side. Who is it on our side? Is it, because I'm hearing Bill, at least I think I heard, I may have heard incorrectly, but it's you rather than the authority or the township board. Who has to negotiate that amount with Mr. DeSanto?
Well, staff cannot, because GHD, as the engineer in the specs, represents the authority.
So does that mean GHD has to do that, Melissa? I'm asking because I'm trying to, you raised the issue because I thought it was just a simple yes, no, but now to me there's a gray area.
I was under the impression that the board could work with DeSanto on the amount. I put the estimate together. It would be about 15,000 to replace. If you want to
heard the
hold something,
15,000,
if you
but
want
I
to
also
hold the whole
heard
15.
Yeah, I heard the 15, but I also heard you say that, to accept this, but then the amount was to be determined. I just want to know who makes that determination. I know Mr. DeSanto is on one side. I want to know who on this side is responsible. I guess maybe I need to ask counsel.
Well, the authority board is the governing body of the
So,
authority.
so can we overrule
Ultimate,
GHD?
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chrisman,
Yes. Thank you, Mark, for helping.
when we were going through this dialogue, we kind of came to the conclusion that, and I believe, and I'm not putting words in Melissa's mouth of staff, but we kind of said, this is an acceptable installation. If it wasn't acceptable, we wouldn't even be
You
here.
wouldn't be here.
Bill told me that in the past, the authority had taken a set off or a contribution, and he suggested that I offer something.
Okay.
So, to me, this is kind of over and above, because I believe, and I think Melissa does, it's probably not needed because it's properly installed. If it wasn't properly installed, she would be saying, tear it up and do it right.
I'm sure.
And we would be doing the same. We think it's passed the most two important tests, and it's appropriate to be accepted. So this was our suggestion. This was our dollar value. This is for the board to accept or reject.
Okay.
And I believe it's over and above because of kind of bifurcate the two issues. First, is it acceptable? If it is, then what? And here we are at this point.
And I was just looking for clarification whether it was to be GHD or us. And so council said it's us.
Yes,
So, okay, that's fine.
it's us.
That's all. I just wanted clarification. Who was ultimately responsible for making the decision?
Well, not to complicate it, but if the concern is that there's a very slight chance that somehow we'll be stuck with the bill or somehow, would it be easier rather than you just give money for something that isn't needed, that there's some kind of just written agreement that if it fails in the future, 15,000 is the agreed upon price, or is that just complicated?
I've even suggested, and I'm very confident with this, if the board said, extend your guarantee for 5 years, I'd be happy to do that and not make the payment. I mean, the payment was kind of like, here it is, take it to the general fund, usually whatever you want to for the authority, because I think we all agree there's this very small percentage of failure. And so, if it's 10%, should it be $1,500 or $15,000? But if the board would prefer a 5-year, an extension of the 18 months to 5 years, we're confident in the installation, and we're happy to do that if that's a preferred.
Good. Thank you, Mark. Melissa, could you respond to Mark's proposal to go to 5 years?
Oh, boy.
Well, I'm just thinking, for us, and I'm trying to weigh that. What would the $2,000 do for us? Granted, it would just go into the general fund. For me, Mark is offering a 5-year guarantee, which extends the amount of time that we have to review it, to look at it, to make certain everything is okay. So for me, and I'm one person who doesn't have all the background and knowledge, have to yield to you, the expert, who have to go out and dig up the dirt and look at the pipes and all that good stuff. I'm just trying to save you time and effort and energy. So my thinking would be, I'd go for the 5-year guarantee and skip the $2,000. But that's, Mr. Chairman, that's only me.
No, Mr. Chrisman, I'm in agreement with you. To me, the dollar value is more in the 5-year agreement, the 5-year extension, than it's going to be in $2,000.
Right.
The $2,000 really, at the end of the day, is incredibly minimal to our budget. But the 5-year extension would be way more important, because what if in year 4 this thing would fail at $15,000, then actually at the cost of that dollar amount in the future to replace it. So I agree.
Yeah.
I would be more inclined to say if Mr. DeSanto is willing to offer an extension to the guarantee for 5 years, I would be more inclined to say we go that route.
And that says to me that Mr. DeSanto believes exactly what they've done. They have done correctly. He's willing to stand behind that. And that's, for me, is his word.
Fine with us. If that's what the board chooses, I'd be happy to modify the request to acceptance with the 5-year maintenance guarantee.
Mark, how long do you think it's going to take to finish Blue Ridge? I mean, I know you just started, but just out of curiosity.
Well, actually, I think in 4 or 5 years we'll be complete.
Okay.
Just so the board knows where we're at, it's kind of off target, but I'll give you a little update. We've had our pre-construction meeting with CVS, which is on the most eastern side towards the Jewish home. They're going to start hopefully in October construction. The 2 retail buildings we have up are about 70% leased. We have signed leases with Starbucks, Jersey Mike's, AT&T. Which one? Great Clips. So they're filled up. The assisted living facilities under contract with Horse, they're submitting their plans in November, planning to start construction in March. We're going vertical already on the apartments. All the townhomes, all the single-family homes are under contract to Ryan Homes, who is building the homes in Stray Winds Farm, and under their takedown schedule, they'll be done in 4 years of housing. So,
Okay. So you're looking at 5, and if we extend it to 5, we can,
yes,
extend
and
the
I
maintenance.
think, in this type of thing, if you're going to see failure from an installation aspect, you're going to see it in the first year or 3. So,
With all the construction and everything going on.
Mark, now that we're off subject, but indirectly related, the apartments that are going up, they're still going to be rentals rather than purchase of condos, correct?
yes, just as we
Okay,
said.
I'm just personally interested.
Yes.
And number 2, when I go to Starbucks, I keep hearing we're going to be open in November, and I keep saying I don't think that's realistic.
Well, we're actually hoping to be paving the interior roads tomorrow. So,
Oh, okay, so maybe.
at least for the first sub-phase of phase 1.
Well, I just need to know when my schedule's going to change to go for my coffee.
Well, I'll keep
Thank
you
you.
advised, but possibly November.
Okay, all right, let's reel this
Yeah,
thing
let's get back
in
on
here.
task, Mr.
Back on
Chairman,
task,
sorry.
Yeah,
on
Mr.
time, on
Chairman, I
task.
would be in favor if we moved it to 5 years also.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay.
Do we, I think if Mr. DeSanto is okay with it, we could go ahead and approve the action tonight with the extension of the guarantee for 5 years versus the $2,000. Would the board in agreement with that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just
Mr.
a
Weaver.
comment. I would recommend that the action include the solicitor's approval of the guarantee.
Okay, then maybe what we should do is, maybe we should table this until our next meeting?
I'll defer to Steve. Can they take action without the agreement?
I mean, as long as they have all the conditions in that they're looking for, because the guarantee is gonna be pretty much what we're accustomed to seeing, except it's gonna be 5 years instead of 18 months.
Okay,
Okay.
And then do away with the 2,000.
then we should be fine to approve it tonight.
Sounds like it.
Okay.
Mr.
All
Chairman?
right.
Yes, Mr. Ramsey.
I do have one question. Should we verify the condition of the line before the end of the 5 years? Either by TVing, mandrelling a live line is not recommended.
Condition upon
Like
solicitor's
just
approval.
throw the
guarantee.
camera down there again to see the condition of the pipe? How do
So
we know
that's
if it's okay?
That's a good idea. I don't
can
see
do
any
that.
problems with that.
If we could throw that into the
Sure.
agreement?
Sure, we're gonna throw into the agreement
the-
of the 5-year guarantee and also TVing the condition of the line to ensure that the line is acceptable for acceptance at the end of that 5-year period. Is that, you got that, Mr. Crispin, since I assume you're gonna make the motion?
Well, we may have to do some rewording, but I'll try to get it all-inclusive.
Okay, sir.
You can do it.
So the motion will be to approve Triple Crown for acceptance of the sewer section for a 5-year guarantee, including the, upon approval by the guarantee is approved by solicitor, and that the line is guaranteed, and this is the last part, the line is guaranteed at the end of the 5 years. Is that correct at the end?
And the condition of the line is checked to be
The
acceptable
line is checked at the end
for-
of the 5 years.
Yeah, is checked and is acceptable for full acceptance at the end of that 5-year period.
Okay. Shelley, you got that? And the solicitor can review that motion. But you know the 3 components that I've attempted to outline.
And Mr. DeSanto, you're good with that?
Yes.
That's fine with us, thank you.
Okay. All right, so we got a motion on the floor by Mr. Chrisman. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Zumas is going to second that. Any further discussion? All right, let's do this by roll call vote, please. Sorry.
Mr. Ramsey,
Aye.
Mrs. Lindsay,
Aye.
Mr. Zumas,
Aye.
Mr. Judd,
Aye.
Mr. Chrisman,
Aye.
Chairman Blaine.
Aye. Motion's approved.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Have a good
appreciate it.
evening.
All right, on to the exciting part of the night, the 2020 Sanitary Sewer Budget Fund review by Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
You sound so excited about going through the budget.
I am. Oh, I'm pleased to.
You're an excited guy, aren't you?
I am pleased. It's my pleasure to present the 2020 Sanitary Sewer Fund budget. As normal, I will just highlight the specific items that have changed from prior years because most of the board members have seen this budget many times. We do have actually some significant changes this year, which is not usual. First off, we have the City of Harrisburg settlement under revenues has zeroed out because we received our last payment in 2019. We currently have the sewer rental at this year's rate of $153 per quarter, pending board member comments. At the end of my presentation, I would like to turn it over to Alton from GHD, who has prepared his normal rate structure analysis for the board to consider. Tapping fees, I apologize, I do have a typo there that I will correct for the November budget, but 130 EDUs is a typo, that's 240. For the last 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in building permits and commercial. We've had quite a few hotels built. So our tapping fees have increased quite a lot. We lost the City of Harrisburg settlement, but we gained in the storm sewer reimbursement. So we now have reimbursement for our billing staff. 30% of the billing staff payroll is in that account, and also Jim's staff to assist Public Works to go out and TV the stormwater pipes. For the total authority revenues for 2020 are $16,900,223. Any questions on revenues before I move to expenses?
So just to clarify again, the sewer rate you're using is $153 a quarter right now.
Correct.
The same as where we're at right now today.
Correct.
So we're not proposing in this budget currently, we're not proposing any rate increase.
We're going to be asking for the board's recommendation on that specific item following Mr. Whittle's presentation.
Okay, I just want to clarify though for what we're seeing right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Any
All
other
right.
questions on revenues? If
Back
not,
to you, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you. Under operating fund expenses, again, major changes this year because of the stormwater fund and the sharing of expenses. So office expenses, telephone and alarm, postage, rent and general services, computer costs, all these items are now shared by the stormwater fund. So actually, we do see a reduction in our sewer fund expenses as a result of the sharing. Mr. Blaine has pointed out to us that he would like to see a detailed accounting of these shared expenses. Staff is recommending that we wait at least for a full year budget until we perform that study. And we do have a plan in place to have staff do payroll reports basically and track their time and come up with actual expenses. The actual payment of bills, that's pretty easy. Paying the postage, we split it 50-50. Some of the other complications are we don't use everything 50-50. Some of it's 70-30. So there is going to be a full report on those items for the 2021 budget. Moving on, there's really no other changes in expenses except we get to vehicle lease payments. We did start a fleet lease arrangement with Enterprise, and after next year, we'll be complete with all of our 15 pickup trucks being leased through Enterprise. So those payments are reflected in this year's budget. And finally, the sewer transmission costs, as you recall, we don't get the Swadera and Harrisburg budgets, CRW budgets, until October or November. So these are just 2019 expenses. Then these will be slightly inflated in November. However, Swadera has done such a great job that I don't anticipate their actual costs going up based on the credit that we got for our third quarter transmission and treatment charges. The debt service, more changes there. We have a new Penvest loan, we have an estimated interest payment, and we have the Babs bond refinancing, which the board is aware of that the township is going to take action on here shortly. Alton and I had a conference call with Jay Winger and John Hewlett, who provided the payment for that refinancing, which is estimated. They will provide a finer number to us after the bonds have closed. But John believes that that number at the end there, the $1,795,000, is correct. That leaves us with the total operating expenditures for $16,141,805. I'll be happy to answer any questions on expenses before we move to the capital budget.
Well, can you say again where we got the shared operating estimates? We're going to wait for a year to get real world experience to
Correct.
see what all this costs. So where did we base those on again?
Well, some of it, mostly it's common sense items that are the bulk of it. For instance, postage, we send out 16,500 bills. We actually send out an extra 500 in stormwater, but basically it's the same. So since we send the same amount of bills out, then it's just logic that you split the postage 50-50. Same thing with the actual bills themselves, a lot of the office expenses. Tim and I and Cindy and Natalie and Danny that do all this stormwater work, We don't actually do 50-50 on that. The girls are telling me it's better a 70-30 split because there's more work in sewer billing. You have to have water usage reports. So basically right now, there's a logic to that and really staff experience already that says, 70-30 makes sense. Again, that's what Mr. Blaine would like to do, is refine those numbers after a year when we have more information. But that's a general description.
Okay.
Yeah, all I'm trying to do is just whatever cost sharing that's occurring, we have a better handle on what that looks like. And let's let the budget run for a year and see what happens first, and then we can get a better line of sight on that.
Any other question from board members on expenses for the capital budget? If none, I'll move on to the capital budget. This changes every year based on the consent decree requirements. We do have the pole building in there, which the board is aware. The supervisors just approved that plan. We plan on moving forward with the bidding and construction of that in early 2020. We will actually start the job later this year by building the pad, advertising, and so forth. So under the sewer system mini basin program, that's just updated again with the new mini basins. So the lion's share of the whole capital program is the BC2 job. That makes up $7.7 million. Just above there, I did pass over, I apologize, under miscellaneous expenses, we do have something new this year. The PennDOT, Melissa can give you more information if you'd like, but PennDOT has open bids, and our share of the sewer work is $390,000. We put in $400,000 for that, so they do plan on starting that job here at the end of next year, or end of this year, late.
They originally were gonna wait for the schools to be out, but I think the bids.
Thank you.
I think the bids got delayed a little bit. So since they just got opened at the end of July, I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is. I don't think they'll wait until school's out at this point, since that would be a whole nother year. But I don't have a hard date on when that's gonna start.
And also, what's new is our TV rig is 15 years old. It's a Roush rig. Staff has put a good effort into finding a buyer for the old rig and then getting good pricing for the new rig. The new rig can be purchased under CoStars. They have selected a rig. And then again, this can be partially shared with the stormwater fund because Jeff will be using it to TV over the next 15 years, storing some stormwater pipe. So we put in a small percentage of that rig for stormwater as well. And then the mainline external repairs, metering, that's all standard. The only other project that we have next year is the Spring Creek job, which we have a second pilot lining project, and the board is aware that our staff is in there right now replacing the building sewers. So we do have 3 pay apps in that as well for $750,000 for lining, and that project will cost us $814,000 next year. So the total for all accounts for capital expenditures for 2020 is $10,690,400. Any questions on capital expenditures?
Any questions for Mr. Weaver? All right, Mr. Weaver, keep going.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Alton, and he can describe what he did with the 2020 rate structure.
Thank you. So there's what we did. We have 2 options this year, and we can talk just for discussion purposes. So the first option that's presented here is all of the updated information based on this year's budget, the changes to the bond schedules as best we know right now. For the Penvest and the Babs bond, we don't have the final payouts, but we have had some estimates from bond counsel. So we've plugged those all in, and we have basically updated all the budgets as best we can. And we have the 2 scenarios are, the first option is if you had the $4 rate increase that had previously been projected. And the second option that we present is if you had no rate increase this year. And you can see that overall it doesn't have a dramatic impact on the budget. What you see is out in the years 2029 through around 2029 through about 2034 that there's a dollar increase per year to be able to meet the previous requirements by the board, which is to keep a 25% contingency in there, or 25% target for remainder, and to keep steady rate increases as we go throughout.
But even with the $1 increase in 2029 in past, I mean, we're still only talking about annual rate increases of 3%, 2.9, 2.8, 2.7, because obviously that is as the full dollar amount gets higher, that percentage is going to come down.
Yeah, I think there, if you recall, last year we had a significant decrease in the projected rates because of, the options for considering storage in the future, and some of the cost savings there, especially based on the success of the program so far. So I think Bill and I keep going back and forth too, because there's even some indicators that some of the projected interceptor upgrades and the sizing of that storage could be even further reduced as we go out if we keep experiencing the same success.
Oh, so you do, and maybe.
Maybe.
We might have that same glitch or that same
hiccup. What we
hiccup.
have here is our, confident, we're pretty
All
confident
things being
this
equal.
is our long-term solution, but there's always some hope that we can, the plan for the cap, or for the Beaver Creek cap is in the next 5-year period, at the end of that 5 years, do a complete study of the area after we've done the majority of the work in BC2 and get BC7 started to see where we expect to be, because those are the last two major projects in Beaver Creek, but they're both substantial in size. But these are a lot better than the $8 rate increases that we had projected years ago before those options came about.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up with Mr. Whittle, for Mr. Ramsey and some other newer board members, I wanted to just take a minute to go back in time and explain where this rate schedule came from. So some of the board members may recall we had that pot of money from 5-10 years. We had about $10 million around 2009. And Mr. Wendell suggested that the board not spend that money, but use that money to offset sewer rates in the future in these years, 2029, 2030, when we get a peak debt service. That's also being accounted for by Jay and John when they do refinancings to also address the debt schedule to help with that. So the general idea with this rate schedule was to keep this money, use it to offset future sewer rates. However, what's happened in the last 10 years is every year when I read the audit report under cash and cash equivalents, that increases every year. The last audit I looked at was we're up to $18 million in cash, which is going to be offset by our payments to Harrisburg of about $1.5 million. So in real numbers, you're looking at $16.5 million in current cash, which is going to go up again after this year. We're projected to see a surplus as well. So staff certainly supports option 2, which is no rate increase, because we continue to grow that cash, but we do support Alton's rate table using that cash over future years to help with that balloon debt service. Right. And one final thing is, I know last year we talked about looking out 20 years. It's difficult to predict, but we do have a court order. So I think it's reasonable to look at this schedule for so long. The one thing it's not accounted for in this schedule, however, and it's kind of absurd to even talk about, but really what you really need to do is look out 40 years, because in years 2039, 2044, I'll have this for you in complete form when we do the refinancing and a new debt service schedule for you to look at. But we actually start retiring debt. So Alton goes out as far as you can possibly go, 2044. But after that, you will see some debt retire, and you actually could see a rate reduction. But Alton, as the consummate naysayer, is telling me that that's foolish, because you know that environmental regulations are going to increase. You're going to have other repairs. So
we're going to be borrowing.
So that's my comments on the budget, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Mr. Weaver, thank you. I mean, I think it's just hearkening back in time. when we decided to go into this detailed program, probably 15 years ago, where we said we're just going to go and replace line. Bottom line, we're just going to go dig it up and replace it. I remember one of our members, Mr. Hoffer, sitting here saying that we just have to go under the guise that this is a perpetual thing. We're going to do this forever. We're going to constantly, forever, we're going to replace lines. So, because once you think you're done, you're going to have to go back and start all over again. So, with that being said, we kind of went through the process of laying out this 30, 40-year plan of what the rate should be. So, I think from that point to where we're at today, I think we're on target or on track with what we kind of talked about we were going to be at. I would say that at this point in time, this is my opinion, and I would let our board members chime in, but, I think that from a fiscal management perspective, we've done a pretty good job with managing these projects. And to me, with the amount of excess cash that we do have accumulated, which is more than what we anticipated at this point in time, probably 10 years ago, I would say that it's probably warrants no rate increase for this year. And we revisit this again next year with the 2021 budget. But that's just my opinion, just looking at it from a fiscal perspective. We obviously have time before the budget's final approved in November to make that final decision, but that's kind of where I would be leaning.
Any other
Any
board
other
comments?
questions by board members on the rate schedule and the budget at this point in time?
I like the way. Good plan.
Yep.
Okay,
Very
we will
nice.
prepare the budget as requested.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Now to township reports, the second consent decree annual DEP meeting summary. I bet you that was exciting.
It was. We could spend hours on this presentation if you'd like.
Please don't.
I will keep this really simple. We received a comment from Mr. Kirshner, who we're really happy that still comes to these annual meetings, who represents the litigants. The meeting was held in Lower Paxton. DEP actually likes us to have it here, and they'd like to get out of the office. So just as a background, as a board may recall, we have to have, as part of our consent decree, an annual meeting to review the annual report. Essentially, Mr. Kirshner made the comment that he is really pleased to see that over the last 15 years that DEP, Lower Paxton, and CRW and Susquehanna have all gotten along so much better over the years, and the success that GHD reports at these annual meetings it speaks for itself. So really, it was a non-eventful annual meeting. Alton, do you have anything to add to that?
One comment.
Sure.
The only comment I'd like to add about the report, what I thought was probably the most important sentence or section out of the whole thing was last year, 2018-19, was significantly wet. Mm-hmm. We had 32 wet weather events of a reportable nature. That would have been 32 wet weather events in 1999 that would have all caused overflows. And this year we had 2 that caused overflows. So that to me is the biggest proponent for the success of what Lower Paxton has done in terms of their collection system.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Whittle. Is there any other comments for GHD or for Mr. Weaver regarding the DEP meeting summary? All right, hearing none, we're on to, is this you, Mr. Shannon? You, Mr. with the engineer's report?
Yes, it is. The board members, you have before you GHD's engineer's report that covers the 3-month period since your meeting at the end of May. During that time, we did work on the annual report. That takes quite a bit of effort every year. And other than that, we had the bid opening for the BC2 project. We're just still waiting for permits on BC2, which we hope to have in the next week or so. And I know Melissa and Bill were in the process of scheduling the pre-construction meeting with Dolly. The Penvest loan closing, we were supposed to have a conference call tomorrow. That was just postponed a couple of weeks, but next time we meet with you, that project is likely to be under construction. As far as GHD, the biggest thing, other than what I mentioned, is we did kick off the BC 7 and 8 project, which is another very large replacement project, and we've are coordinating with Jeff Klein and HRG for stormwater improvements so we can get all that work incorporated into the same contract right off the bat this time. So I'll stop talking and ask if anybody has any questions about our engineer's report.
Kevin, the BC7, is that the Blue Ridges out in the blues?
No, that's BC2. That's the one that's
Two.
getting ready to start.
Okay.
The BC2 project basically that's getting ready to go under construction basically goes from I-81 on the south, roughly Mountain Road on the west, Lingelstown Road on the north, and you could call it Wenrick Street.
Oh, okay.
That whole area, very big area. BC7 is South Paxtonia, like Meadowview, where Springgate is, that area. Springgate's kind of centered in the BC7 project
That's
area.
a very large project.
Yeah, that's another large project. Maybe not quite as big as BC2,
As the
but
Blues.
almost.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Shannon on the GHD engineer's report for the sanitary sewer fund? All right, hearing none, let's move now to the next fund, the stormwater fund. So no old business. We're going to go right to new business. Resolution 1915-01 through 03, authorizing combination of temporary and permanent easements for stormwater conveyance improvements in the BC2ABC mini basin project. Mr. Weaver.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, these are standard resolutions for stormwater as well. You've seen these quite a bit for sanitary sewer. Now that the authority owns the stormwater system, you'll be seeing these just as often. These are temporary and permanent construction easements for the BC2 project that Kevin just mentioned. There are 3 properties on this list that staff and HRG were unable to negotiate a settlement, either on the square feet of easement or the compensation. The resolutions are in final form and ready for board action, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Weaver, thank you. Is there any questions for Mr. Weaver?
No, these are straightforward, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve Resolution 2019-15-01 and 2019-15-02 and 2019-15-03, condemning the temporary and permanent easements for stormwater convenience improvements in the BC2 ABC mini basin project as presented and recommended by Mr. Weaver.
Mr. Chrisman, well done. Is there a second to Mr. Chrisman's motion?
I'll second it.
Miss Lindsay is all over it. All right, so we got a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? We can do this by voice vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right. Mr. Kenworthy, I think you're up. Get to see the man. Final design proposal for the Stonebridge Stream Bank Restoration Project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hopefully in front of you, you have a document dated July 26th outlining the proposed scope of services for final design and permitting of the Stonebridge Apartment stream restoration. I assume you're aware that there has been some preliminary work already completed on this project to identify scope and limits. The current proposal in front of you outlines the final design and permitting effort associated with that. I think the board is well aware of the project and the importance of this within the Paxton Creek TMDL reduction plan. We outline a number of scope services associated with that and present it for your approval, and certainly I could answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Kenworthy, thank you very much. Is there any questions for Mr. Kenworthy? Yes, Mr. Ramsey.
Maybe jumping the gun a little bit, but do you have any idea of what the stabilization method will be?
Excuse me, can you accommodate the mic? I'm having difficulty hearing if you're not speaking to the mic.
I said
Robin,
maybe
maybe you
jumping
can
the
help.
gun a little bit. Okay.
Thank you.
But do you have the stabilization method? Do you have an idea of what it may be?
Well, certainly it'll be a combination of items. Certainly looking at the cross-section of the flow area itself. We're looking at some certain plantings, looking at some of the outfall structures that will provide some energy dissipation. So very specific, no, I don't have that with me, but it will be a number of items like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Kenworthy?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Judge jumping in here. Go ahead.
If everything goes according to plan, when would the project actually get underway?
Certainly the design effort can start shortly after your approval of our services. I believe we would look at, trying to see if I have a date in there. Completed within 6 months. On the last page, look to complete that within 6 months, at which point we would have the construction plans available for bidding.
Oh, okay. I see it. Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On page, I think it's page 7. Yes. At page 7, it talks about compensation. It has an estimated fee. I want to know how far over and above, and I'd rather have a range or not to exceed. I don't like estimated. It's sort of like, I'm going to do a diagnosis. You may have a heart attack, but I don't know whether your heart's good or just really bad. Sorry.
Mr. Crispin, I'm coming up on 1 year from my open heart surgery.
Well, then use the parallel in my comments to you as you do the analysis of a letter.
I appreciate that.
I'm sure you do. Sorry, I didn't mean to remind you of that which is forthcoming.
No, it's all good. Certainly with some of the tasks that are identified in there, we've tried to identify the effort associated with that by either a number of reviews or a number of hours associated, and that's where we came up with that estimated value. If you would like a lump sum
it's something maybe not to exceed, or I'm always concerned when I build a building and I have and I don't anticipate any change orders, even though I know it will have some. I'd like to have some kind of range, and I just don't like the word
I think it's not to
estimate.
exceed fee is going to be $77,000.
I would certainly look at that.
Okay. I don't mind approving it. However, my only concern is the dollar amount and the way it's phrased.
Just to ask more specifically, once design reviews are all, what is our estimated best hope for when construction actually, that part of the project begins?
I think we know.
Estimate, obviously.
I believe the township attends the authority by recommendation of HRG would intend to start it as soon as possible. However, Mr. Wolf and Randy Allen are still negotiating the PRP agreement with the 3 parties, and we don't have a permit yet. So I believe the schedule for the permit is to be submitted in 6 months, and that sort of corresponds with your design, correct?
Correct.
So the way things would play out in theory with their proposal to resubmit the PRP plan to DEP for the permit would correspond that sometime in January or February next year you would get a recommendation from HRG to move ahead.
Around January next year, we'll have a good idea as
Yeah.
far. Okay, and the only reason I'm interested is now that we're talking about stormwater fees and budgets, and people are starting to pay for stuff, it'll be, I think, important at some point for them to see what they're paying for.
Correct.
And what this is. It's all been very abstract up till now. And I think once we have something to show and they, this is not just new, a new fee, it's a whole new concept, for most people. So that's the only reason I'm looking for soil to begin to be turned over and vegetation put in, things like that, so that people can see what this is.
And we
all
have heard
about.
your request, and I know the communications director is planning on taking pictures and posting it on the webpage.
Oh, yeah. Leanne, I'm working with Leanne on that. I know. This is, and I hope I'm not a bother when it comes to that. It's just that it's all been very abstract up till now, so we're going to have actually some projects to talk about.
There is one that has started
Up in Forest Hills. Right. Right.
and that'll start this fall. So there'll be two, even before the Stone Bridge.
Good. Yeah, and I'm tracking that as well, and I appreciate your patience ahead of time if I'm too eager to get photos and all that stuff that we can show people.
Good.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, so we can maybe return to my point to make certain that we have a number. Sorry?
Just a comment from staff. Typically,
Sure.
what we've done in the past for these type of proposals is recommend that you approve it not to exceed without further approval from the board.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, until you get into the project, you don't know how much time and what materials you're gonna need.
Right.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we're going to have a not-to-exceed fee of $77,000. Anything over that has to have approval of the board. Okay. All right, hearing no more discussion, the chair will entertain a motion on the action from HRG.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the final design proposal for the Stone Bridge Stream Bank Restoration Project as presented by Mr. Kenworthy with the amount to be not to exceed $77,000, and should it exceed that or propose to exceed that, it will require approval of this board.
Okay. Mr. Chrisman, thank you very much. Is there a second to Mr. Chrisman's motion?
Second.
Mr. Judd. Mr. Judd jumping on that one. All right. So we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I think we can do this by voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right. Bradley Gottschall, you are up to talk about the Stormwater Fund budget. How you feel? You feel good?
Well,
You feel ready?
I feel even better because Mr. Weaver did such a stand-up job presenting the.
Are you going to pass this over to him?
I believe that's what we're going to do, Mr. Weaver.
Oh, that's a nice move right there. That was sweet.
Mr. Weaver and I and the other departments have been diligently working over the past couple of weeks to get these budget drafts together, and he is more than qualified and best suited to assist the board in going over this.
Mr. Weaver, that's what you do when you're sitting up at the
Awesome.
podium. Just push it down right
Well,
down
I'm going to
there.
pass it down to Jeff here in a minute.
Jeff, where do you go?
Idea.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as Mr. Gottschall has stated, this was again a unique situation where we have more information, and we prepared the 2020 budget as a team effort. We had the finance department, we had Jeff, HRG, Mr. Gottschall, and Randy Allen. So the stormwater fund total operating revenues are projected at $4,134,806, and that basically is pretty simple, and it just encompasses the stormwater fee itself and some interest income. We're using the $32 a quarter rate, which is $128 per ERU per year, as established by Raftellus and approved by the board. Really nothing else to say about that other than the fact that we have a 3% delinquency, but Mr. Stein recommended that we approve the resolution that the stormwater fee go that all charges for sanitary sewer and stormwater go to stormwater first. So I put 3% delinquency. I think that's even very conservative because all the money is going to stormwater first. So there is an offset in revenues for a 3% delinquency.
Okay.
So again, total $4,134,806. Any questions on revenues?
Bill, the 235 ERUs, it says new ERUs?
Correct.
So new properties or people that didn't have sewer, now we're building them for stormwater?
It's just like sanitary sewer billing. So we use, as Mr. Blaine requested, a 3-year average of building permits. So when you look at the growth in the last 3 years, we've seen a significant increase. I got the sewer permit list from Cindy and Natalie and double checked it with Shirley. We match. So that's basically just an average of the last 3 years in building permits.
So how many new?
New houses.
Yeah, okay. How many new that don't have sewer that we're now billing for stormwater?
I believe the final count was around 590.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right,
Any other questions on revenues?
let's go right to administrative expenses.
So, board members, management reimbursement from the township, that item was prepared by the finance department, and Jeff can comment more if he would like. In your packet, you have under Exhibit 2, the stormwater management reimbursement. That basically encompasses all the payroll for Jeff's staff to manage the stormwater system, including all workman's comp, medical, dental, all the markup for that, for all the payroll. In addition, Jeff calculated the street sweeping costs, leaf collection, stormwater labor, public works equipment cost, and the administrative charges, which has a total, again, of $1,017,000. The management reimbursement to sewer, we already talked about that as part of the sewer revenue. Again, that's basically just the staffing to do the stormwater billing. So that's an expense on the stormwater fund side. The audit fees, we don't know what they're going to be yet, along with the insurance. We hope to get an insurance quote here shortly, and the audit is being reviewed with Brad and finance with the supervisors, and the authority typically accepts the same auditor. Correct, Brad? So moving on, again, all these other services are shared. Office expense, postage, rent and general services, computer cost. The PA1 Call Act locator services, we split those costs as well. We put in money for plan review fees. That was not in last year's stormwater fund. We do have to work with HRG to do dedication of the new stormwater system. And then Jeff puts in here his 5% cost for the public works facilities. The total for those accounts is $312,400. When you add in the estimated debt service, which we receive again from John and Jay, based on the upcoming bond issue for the $10 million to do the stormwater improvement projects in the PRP plan, that debt service is estimated at $615,000. Total stormwater operating expenditures are estimated at $2,441,471. Jeff, you have any other comments on that? I'll be happy to answer any questions, and Jeff would as well, I'm sure.
Jeff, nice job. When you're when you're done with working at township, give me a call. I might have a job in an accounting firm for you.
Good comment, Jeff.
And again, as Mr. Blaine requested, on the stormwater budget side, we will be tracking these expenses and the percentages and have a full accounting of all these after a year. If there's no questions on the revenues and expenditures, we can move into the capital improvements.
Why don't we do that?
Okay. So this was prepared with the assistance of HRG. Their budget is also in the packet as an exhibit. First up is the Joint Pollution Reduction Plan, as we just approved a Stonebridge Apartment Stream Bank Restoration Project. It also includes next year HRG's cost to bid and construction admin. Construction costs estimated at $730,000. PennDOT shared credit project of $500,000, which actually I believe we just received a memo today from Mr. Wolf and Randy that will probably increase to $1 million based on their current updates with meetings with PennDOT and the municipal group. So I would expect to see a change in that number of an increase of $500,000 when we present the budget in November if everything stays the same. Moving on to the actual storm system rehab program. This is basically Jeff and HRG putting in their costs for what they expect to spend in 2020, which is they've been following us with the sanitary sewer project. So we have the BC2 storm sewer project. We estimate half of the Dolly contract to be done next year. And the GIS MS4 updates, Tim is actually doing an RFP to send to GHD and HRG to get competitive pricing to comply with the MS4 permit. We've met with both groups. Miscellaneous expenses, again, shared expenses. The pole building will be constructed next year. We've allotted some room in there for Jeff for storing some equipment. And the BC7, HRG plans on doing a design to go along with Kevin's report as well, that the BC7 will be started for the sanitary sewer. And then finally, there's an annual capital replacement that we put in annually for $1 million that will be selected by HRG and GHD. This number will change significantly probably between now and November after Jeff and HRG can do more digging on that. But I believe, Jeff, that is, you said Earl and Byron, correct?
We would like to look into that with the next big contract, yes.
So that sums up the capital expenditures proposed for 2020. Total $4,340,400. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Jeff, so we've outgrown the, no, okay. I was like, already? Well, when Mr. Weaver said you were going to be putting some of your equipment over there, I thought we outgrew the building already.
It's really for future.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the Raftella study, once the MS4 permitting requirements and the compliance requirements start gearing up, Raftella's recommended, I believe, 2 additional employees, right?
Right, that is in case stormwater forces a growth in the workforce and also in vehicles.
Okay.
So if vehicles would have to go and take some storage space up that we have now, the things that we'd be storing now would go over into there under the stormwater.
You scared me. I thought we
No.
outgrew that building
No,
already.
you scared me too.
No.
No, we didn't.
We do store all the plows in there, which we do help the township for the plowing.
Okay.
We have the plows in our building.
Yeah, no, our plows.
Your plows.
Oh, your plows.
That's true.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no other comments there, we can just move right into township reports at this point. Let's go to an update on stormwater user fee billing with the July 2nd quarterly sewer billing. But turn it over to you, Mr. Weaver. You looks like you have a number of bullet points there you want to talk about, so I'm going to let you run with it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm happy to report that staff has sent out bills for the stormwater fee with the July billing. We sent out 16,468 bills. a total of 32,302 ERUs for a total billing amount of $1,033,667. As of today, my memo had stated that we received $776,000. That amount has increased up to $800,000. We expect to be to $850 by delinquent notices going out next week, which would leave it at standing balance of around $200,000. We received a total of 21 appeals, and I've attached some of those in your packet to show some examples of denied appeals and approved appeals. We also received about 20 calls a day initially over the last 30 days for about a total of 600. Most are simple residential questions of why we received the bill and commercial questions on how the fee was calculated. So just a little bit about the appeals. Brad has put up the listing there. These were generally commercial customers that were questioning how their impervious surface was calculated. And they did not understand or believe that stone was considered impervious surface. Stone is in the stormwater ordinance as impervious surface, and we mirrored the definition in our stormwater resolution, billing resolution. So in those cases, we had to deny the appeal on the basis that we have to comply with the stormwater ordinance and our own billing resolution. The other ones were simple classifications where the county, there could actually be something good to come out of the stormwater fee. Some people may be paying taxes too high. We don't know that for a fact, but all the stormwater billing was based on the county data, so there was a lot of people we found that got bills for multiple buildings or apartments. So those required inspections. I had to go out and meet with the property owner. We're still in process of doing that for some of the ones that show pending. So the county showed them as apartments. We met with the property owners in several cases and found that they haven't had apartments there for 40 years. You could see where they removed the electric meter. So they did ask the question, could I be paying taxes too high? Of course, we can't give them advice on that, but there's a good possibility depending on the value of the property. So generally, those are the cases for the appeals or ERUs in the impervious surface itself or classifications. We received a few for pervious surface areas that were not on our aerial photography. So a developer actually submitted plans to us to show that where these pervious areas were. And Tim has been a great help with our interns who just left, but they actually assisted in going out and digitizing some of these areas and then updating the map with Todd from GHD.
And Bill, real quick, when it comes to the ordinance and impervious definitions of those things, we took those from national standards, right? I mean, we take those from established.
Well, so from what I'm being told from Randy Allen, who is our MS4 coordinator, is the county, or DEP, provided the stormwater ordinance, and the county and the townships approved it, and that included impervious surface.
So you're not really going to see this varying from township to township?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No.
So Bill, if they were denied the appeal, will they then go to common pleas? Do they
No, they have 30 days to come to you, the authority board, to seek relief from my decision.
Oh, okay.
So this was all put into our stormwater policy, sanitary sewer and stormwater billing policy that the board approved before we did the billing in July. You approved that policy in May.
Okay.
So basically, I review the appeal, and after I make a judgment, then they can appeal to the authority board.
To the sewer authority?
Yes.
Or to the stormwater, okay.
Yep. And then if they don't like their decision, Steve, then they could go to the Court of Common Pleas?
Yes, under a local agency appeal.
Okay.
Any questions on stormwater user fee appeals before I go to credit policy?
Nope. Let's move right to the credit policy, and I see that the matter of Vanguard Realty Group is the item that's attached here, and I see our representative Eric Kessler in the audience today. So
So yes, board members, I received a letter, as the board did, from Mr. Kessler requesting the board consider some sort of credit or new fee for his site based on the fact that he has installed some stormwater management facilities. As the board is aware, the initial fee was established without a credit policy. Raftellus presented some information to the Board of Supervisors, and they elected at that time not to adopt a credit policy. With the statement that they could look at it into the future, which now would be the authority as the governing body. I see Mr. Kessler is in the audience. Would you care, Mr. Kessler, to add anything to your letter?
Eric Kessler, Linglestown. I brought this up before, and I remember, Gary, you had said, let us implement the fees, and then we'll discuss credits. Okay, now I'm ready to discuss. But I don't want to talk credits. Seriously, I looked at it. Instead of talking credits, what I'm asking is if you can look at the few farms that are left in this township and just simply calculate it a little bit differently. That way you don't have to get into issuing credits. And I will say, I understand the need for the fee. I have a lot of properties. I don't gladly pay it, but I've paid them in full. I understand it. I also would like the board to try to understand the people who still own the farms in this township. I'm guessing there might be a dozen or 15 good-sized farms. I really don't even, I'm not sure. I've been a developer for 40 years. I've been buying farms. Now I'm on the other side of the equation. I'm trying to hang on to my farm. And through farming, you make almost no net revenue. It's a struggle. The fee, you're about 50% into my pocket on my net revenue. It's a killer. What I'm asking is, and I'll use my farm as an example, but I'm not here asking just for me, but I'm asking for all the farms in the township. And I've had other farm owners also ask me, what are you going to do about this? Well, so here I am. My suggestion is the following, and I'll use my farm for an illustration. I have 88 acres, I have one house, and I have one farm building and a long driveway. The rest of it is grown in hay. I do my own stormwater management, best practices, as I'm supposed to. I'm no burden to the township financially at all. What I'm asking is the board to calculate an operating farm as such. One farmhouse with its driveway connecting to the public road would be one EDU, just like, or ERU, like any other house in the township. And then any other building on the farm would be calculated and billed for the ERUs. The penalization of classifying me as a farm is really penalizing my long driveway and my house because everything else is calculated. So all I'm asking is if you look at a farm, you take the house with the long driveway and have that as one ERU like everybody else gets charged. And I expect the additional, in my case, I have one additional building, but I used to have about 10 and they were all consolidated to one. But the square footage or the ERUs would have been the same calculation. So I'm not asking for a credit. I'm asking for you to look at your methodology of charging an operating farm. And to clarify it, it's from the public road drive to the house would be, like everybody else, one ERU. And then any other auxiliary building, garage, barn, any other building would be measured and billed accordingly. That's all I'm asking. So I'm not even mentioning the word credits. I think if there's a better methodology, we don't need to start giving credits out.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Eric.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you for the thoughts and suggestions,
Yeah,
Eric.
yeah. I mean, I think at this point in time, we're this is new. We just implemented it. We know there's some tweaks that have to be made, and if you can bear with us and give us some time to review your letter, and review the calculation of what you're talking about and how we might be able to do something with that or implement that in the future, that would be appreciated.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just Mr. Kessler mentioned there's about 15 farms in the township.
I'm not sure, but I'm
Well,
just-
what I just wanted to clarify, so you may recall, we did put into to the billing policy, certain policies for agriculture properties. So what we did is we provided them the opportunity with Mr. Stein's assistance to document that they weren't conducting any commercial business or farming operation. So initially, based on Raftelis's analysis on the county records, we had 39 farms.
Oh, wow.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Well, in actuality, what we determined, though, is out of that 39 farms, that was reduced down to about 29 farms because they signed off saying we're not doing any agricultural farming and we're not conducting any commercial business. So Cindy has all that data. I can get that for you at the November meeting. Based on my recollection from what she told me, that did reduce from 39 to around 29.
But even so, I would have never guessed
I would have
29
never
even.
thought that
That's to me sounds extremely high for our municipality.
Right.
Are they considered like farmettes too? Because there's like farms and some people have like a farmette.
What's the definition of a farm then?
Yeah.
According to their
Agricultural definition is basically you're tilling the land and harvesting a crop for sale.
And that's a farm.
So you could have 3
That's in the
acres
zoning
and-
ordinance, right, Steve? I believe, yeah.
So you could have 1 or 2 acres and that constitutes.
So I just wanted to clarify
Yeah, but
those,
thank you.
those stats.
I will say, Mr. Weaver, I mean, just logically looking at the letter that Mr. Kessler provided and thinking it through, I mean, I would like to revisit that process in regards to the farms and the calculation. I do
We can
think
take
that-
a look at it.
Yeah.
Steve,
Absolutely.
that would complicate Steve's legal advice, which is if it ain't residential, it's commercial. So in this case, he didn't say it like
It's
that.
not a
did he?
matter of being commercial. Remember,
Right.
the way it's written is there are residential properties and there are non-residential properties.
Right. So Steve really helped us simplify things. So what Eric is stating is that, to be more clear, is that his house, even though he lives in a residence there, he has to be considered commercial because he's not residential
Right.
exclusively. So that would be a change in policy for sure. I'm not saying that it's not possible. It would be complicated. It would take a good staff effort for that, but we can certainly look into it.
Mr. Kessler, can I just ask you a question? With doing it the way you're recommending it, would it be considerably less than what you're paying now?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I'm just curious, like,
yeah.
I know it's going to be less, but I'm just curious how much less.
It goes roughly from 20.8 to, I think, about 7, so.
Oh, wow.
It is significantly less.
Okay.
But I'm still, if I didn't sell the hay, then I would be a house. That's kind of a real funny line because we're trying to make a go of the farm. We're actually getting charged a higher rate, but we have a house. Now, there is a second house on my farm on its own parcel that pays its normal fee. That's not the issue here, so I don't want to get it complicated. But you need, there's residential, but farms are residential, but we sell some things commercially, and that's a gray area you keep stepping over. But the point is, the tax gets to the point where maybe I should stop farming, and that's very counterproductive.
Okay.
So you're about 50% of my net, so why work? So I would ask you, even if you want a third category of simply operating farms, and you probably should clarify it, operating farms 15 acres or greater. I'm just suggesting, this is off the top of my head, and that is simply in the spirit of trying to hold on to what is left of farms, because they're going to be gone soon. Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you.
I am happy to stop in and assist with language if you want my 2 cents, but
I
thank
bet you are.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else you want to cover, Mr. Weaver, on phone calls received,
No,
or
I think
stormwater
we've-
emails, or update on the webpage?
We've certainly discussed stormwater billing enough. Just a reminder, there are stormwater emails. There is a stormwater page. We put that on the bills, and GHD was very helpful on the web page stormwater link, where customers could go in and view their actual impervious surface. That concludes my township report, so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any more questions? All right, hearing none. Mr. Kenworthy. Where's Mr. Hintz today? I mean, where's he at? He's at the beach.
Mr. Hines is on
who goes
some
to the beach and
well-deserved
misses the sewer?
vacation this evening.
Well, we get to see you, my man. Go ahead.
Hopefully I can do as well as Mr. Hines regularly does. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hopefully you have in your packet a report dated August 27, 2009. If you've had a chance to review that, there are a number of items in there. Some of the highlights I just want to point out, particularly the MS4. We continue to assist on items associated with that. One item of particular note is the annual reporting, item D. That is due September 30. So continuing to assist on getting that pulled together so that can be submitted in time.
Okay.
We did talk about the Stonebridge Apartments on page 2. Again, just a number of design projects and their status on page 2. I think, as was mentioned earlier by Mr. Klein, on page 3, the Forest Hill Road area has begun construction as part of the 2019 drainage improvement projects. And those are really the highlights I just wanted to point out. Certainly I could attempt to answer any questions you may have on other items in the report.
Any further comments here from Mr. Kenworthy on the report? All right. Hearing none.
Thank you.
So here we are at the end of this wonderful meeting. Hey, great job, staff. All the way around. Good work. All the way around. Board members, thanks for coming tonight. I know it was a tough one. Brad, you stayed awake. I'm proud of you. All right, there we go. Just a couple announcements real quick. So the next Lower Paxton Township Authority meeting will be Tuesday, November 26th. That would be 2 days before Thanksgiving, if I'm correct. There is the possibility that we could meet sometime before then, depending on if there's a need for a meeting relating to an authority matter at that time. That would usually be, if I'm correct, the third Tuesday of September or
correct.
October.
Yep.
And that is, again, tentative and depending upon business. Any other board member comments at this point? All right, hearing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
26th. Mr. Chairman, I will not be here if we have a meeting on the 26th. Just in case you needed to get a count to make sure you have a quorum.